I want to tell you about the morning I sat down at my kitchen table with my coffee and opened my email. This is something I do every morning. 71 years old, retired, living alone in the same house in Savannah, Georgia, that I have lived in for 19 years. The coffee is the same, the table is the same, the light comes through the kitchen window at the same angle it has always come, falling across the same blue tablecloth in the same way. And yet, on a Tuesday morning in October, ordinary in every visible way, just another morning in just another week of a life that had settled after many years of grief and adjustment into something peaceful, I opened my email and there was a message from a name I did not recognize. The subject line said, "I think I know who you are." I almost deleted it. At 71, you learn to be careful about unexpected messages from unknown senders. My finger was on the button. And then I read the first three words of the preview. Is this Eleanor? My full name, not a common name. My full, correct, not often used name. I put the coffee down, I opened the message, and I sat at my kitchen table in the October morning light, and I read words that I had imagined receiving for 22 years and had largely, in the last few of those years, stopped imagining would ever come. The message was from my granddaughter, Lily, who I had last seen when she was 3 years old, who was now 25, who had found a photograph of me on a genealogy website and recognized something in my face, something her mother had shown her once, years ago, before things became too complicated for the showing, and had typed three words into a search bar and found me. Is this you? It was me. It has always been me. I just didn't know she was looking. I need to tell you what happened all those years ago to create the distance between us. I am going to tell it as fairly as I can, not as a defense of myself. I made mistakes. I know I made mistakes, and they contributed to what happened, but also not as a condemnation of anyone else, because the people involved were all of them doing the best they could with what they had, which is all any of us ever do, which is sometimes still not enough. My son David was Lily's father. David and his wife Karen had a marriage that was, from the beginning, more difficult than either of them let on publicly. I saw the signs. I was his mother, and I saw things, but I did not intervene. I told myself it was not my place. I told myself they were adults who needed to work through their difficulties in the way that adults do, without their mothers inserting themselves. In retrospect, there were moments when the right kind of saying something might have helped, but I said nothing. The marriage ended when Lily was 2, an ugly ending, not violent, nothing like that, but bitter in the way of two people who have a great deal to say to each other and none of the language to say it without causing damage. Karen moved to Oregon with Lily. David stayed in Savannah. The custody arrangement was difficult and inconsistently followed. David's relationship with Karen deteriorated further over the years into something that made even the practical co-parenting essentially impossible. You, who was not party to any of the legal proceedings, who had no standing in any of the arrangements, found myself on the wrong side of a situation that I had not created and could not fix. Karen did not prevent me from contacting Lily, but she did not facilitate it either. And David, who was my connection to them both, became increasingly unreliable in the years after the divorce, not from malice, but from the particular collapse of a person who has lost what they loved and has not found a way to reconstitute themselves. I wrote letters, birthday cards every year on the right date to the Oregon address that David gave me and that I was never entirely certain was current. I sent small gifts, nothing expensive, just things a child might like, things I had chosen with the careful attention of a woman who did not know a child but loved her from a great distance. I do not know if Lily received any of them. For 22 years, I did not know. And then, on a Tuesday in October, she found a photograph on a genealogy website a photograph I had uploaded 3 years ago at the suggestion of a friend who thought it might be a pleasant way to connect with distant relatives, not with any expectation that it would lead anywhere significant, not with the particular hope I am embarrassed to admit I felt when I uploaded it. It led somewhere. It led to 3 words typed by a 25-year-old woman in Portland, Oregon, who had been carrying half a story her whole life and had decided on an ordinary afternoon to go looking for the other half. I want to tell you what Lily wrote. Not word for word, that is between her and me and belongs to us, but the shape of it, the spirit of it. She wrote that she had found my photograph while researching her family history, that she had recognized the surname and something in the face, something her mother had once pointed to in an old photograph and said that was your grandmother when she was young, that she had spent 2 weeks after finding the photograph deciding whether to reach out, that she had written and deleted the message several times before finally sending it. She wrote that she did not know what had happened between the adults in her life, that she had been told different versions at different times and had eventually stopped asking because the asking seemed to cause pain to everyone she asked, that she was not reaching out to relit, I-gate, any of it. And she wrote, I am 25 years old and I have a grandmother that I have no memory of. And I thought maybe it wasn't too late to change that if you are willing. No pressure. I understand if this is complicated. Pause. 6 seconds. I read that message 3 times, and then I did something I have not done in many years. I put my face in my hands and I wept at my kitchen table, not from sadness, or not only from sadness, from the particular overwhelming relief of something you had stopped allowing yourself to want, arriving anyway. 22 years, 22 years of birthday cards sent into silence, 22 years of imagining a face growing from the 3-year-old I remembered into the adult I could not know. 22 years of carrying a love that had no one to land on, and here she was. 25 years old in Portland, Oregon, thoughtful enough to say no pressure, brave enough to send the message anyway. I sat at my table for a long time, and then I wrote back. I wrote carefully, not too much. I did not want to overwhelm her with 22 years of everything at once, not too little. I did not want her to think that her message had landed in indifference. I wrote, yes, this is me. I have been hoping to hear from you for a very long time. I would very much like to know you, if you are willing. Take all the time you need. I am not going anywhere. I sent it, and then I sat by the window and waited. She replied in 40 minutes, 40 minutes that I did not breathe through entirely normally. But she replied, we wrote to each other for 3 months before we spoke on the phone. Not because either of us was avoiding the phone, but because the emails had a quality that we both valued, a thoughtfulness, a deliberateness. You can read an email 3 times before you respond. You can choose your words with care. You can be honest without the vulnerability of your voice betraying you before your words do. We wrote about our lives, the practical, structural facts first, where we lived, what we did, the shape of our days. Lily worked at a nonprofit in Portland focused on affordable housing. She had a dog named Fig, a small opinionated terrier mix who featured prominently in her descriptions of daily life. She had friends she loved and a life that sounded full and real and like something she had built with her own hands. She was, in every way I could discern through the medium of written words, and a person I would have liked very much, even if she had not been my granddaughter. She wrote about her mother carefully, without asking me to take sides, but honestly, Karen had done her best. That was the picture Lily painted, a mother who had been through something very hard and had not always had the resources to move through it gracefully, and who loved Lily completely and had made some choices that Lily was still understanding. She did not mention David directly. Not in the first month, and I did not prompt her. I wrote about my life, about Savannah, which she had never seen, about the garden I kept and the book club I attended on Wednesday evenings, and the cat named Henry who had been my companion for 8 years and who regarded everything that was not food or sunlight with studied indifference. And I wrote about the genealogy website and the friend who had suggested it and the vague, embarrassed hope I had felt when I uploaded the photograph that had found its way to her screen. I wrote about her father, not defensively, not to make her think more or less of him, but because she was his daughter and she deserved to know that whatever else David had been. And he had been complicated, he had been difficult, he had not been the son I had hoped he would become. He had loved her. She was the thing he talked about in the years when we still talked, the person he asked about and worried over and grieved the distance from, in the way of people who do not know how to close a distance they themselves created. David had died 4 years ago. A heart attack, he was 53 years old. I did not know if Lily knew. She did. Yet her mother had told her. She had grieved. She wrote about it briefly, carefully, with the particular honesty of someone processing a loss that is complicated. Because the relationship was complicated, she had not known how to mourn him fully because she had not known him fully. That unfinished quality was the hardest part. I understood that completely. I had been living with my own version of it for 22 years. Lily suggested the phone call in her email on a Friday afternoon in January. She wrote, I think I'm ready to hear your voice. If you are, I have a feeling it will be less scary than I'm making it in my head. Saturday morning, I could call you around 10, your time. I replied within 5 minutes, which was, I recognized, slightly faster than my usual careful pace. But some things do not require deliberation. Saturday morning, I was up at 6. This was not unusual for me. I have always been an early riser, you see, but the quality of the wakefulness was different. The particular alert, slightly anxious awareness of someone waiting for something important. I made coffee. I sat in the chair by the window. Henry came and sat on my lap in the heavy, committed way of cats who have decided that a lap is now theirs and any objection is irrelevant. At 10 o'clock, my phone rang. I looked at the number, Oregon area code, a number I'd saved the night before under Lily. I answered. I said, hello. And she said, hi, Eleanor. Not Grandma, Eleanor, which was exactly right. She did not know me well enough for Grandma, and I was not going to ask her to perform a closeness we had not yet built. Eleanor was perfect. Eleanor was honest. Her voice, and I want to try to describe her voice. It was lower than I had expected. Warm, with a quality of thoughtfulness in it, a slight pause before certain sentences that told me she was choosing her words with the same care I recognized from her emails. And underneath the thoughtfulness, something else, a particular note that I cannot quite name, except to say that it was familiar in a way that went past the logical. Familiar in the way that blood is familiar, the way certain expressions and inflections carry themselves through generations in ways that defy explanation. She sounded, in certain moments, like David, not strongly, not in a way that would be obvious to anyone who had not known him, but in a particular rhythm of speech, a way of landing on certain words that I recognized from 38 years of knowing his voice. Like, I did not say this to her on that first call, but I felt it and I held it carefully the way you hold something precious that you are not yet sure how to share. We talked for 2 hours and 11 minutes. I know because I looked at the call log afterward, not obsessively, just with the particular need to make the thing real by seeing it in concrete form. 2 hours and 11 minutes. A Saturday morning in January, Henry sleeping on my lap throughout, entirely indifferent to the significance of what was happening above his head. We talked about everything and nothing, about her work, about Savannah, about Fig the opinionated terrier and Henry the indifferent cat, about what she remembered of her early childhood. Very little, as you would expect from a 3-year-old's memory, But a few images, a yard somewhere warm, a voice reading to her, a smell she associated with something like safety that she had never been able to identify. I told her the yard was here in Savannah, and the voice was mine. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, I thought it might be she came to Savannah in April, 5 months after the first email, 3 months after the first phone call, long enough that we had built something real between us. Not the full relationship that years would eventually build, but a foundation. Something honest and mutual and chosen by both of us with clear eyes. I stood at the airport arrivals gate and I waited. I had a photograph of her on my phone. She had sent several over the preceding months. I knew what she looked like. But knowing what someone looks like in a photograph and seeing them walk toward you through an airport crowd are two entirely different things. She came through the doors with a carry-on bag and a jacket over her arm, and she was scanning the waiting area, and then she saw me and she stopped. Just for a moment, a brief stopping as if she was taking a breath before the next step. And then she walked toward me. She was taller than I had imagined. She had David's eyes. I saw it immediately and had to hold very still for a moment with the weight of it. She had my mother's hair, which was extraordinary. My mother had been gone for 30 years, and here was that exact particular shade of it walking toward me in an airport in April. We stood in front of each other. Neither of us spoke for a moment, and then she said, Hi, say Eleanor. And I said, Hi, Lily. And she put her arms around me, and I held on to my granddaughter for the first time in 22 years. I am not going to try to describe what that felt like. Some things resist description. Some things are simply too full to be emptied into words without losing what makes them what they are. I will say only this: it felt like an ending and a beginning simultaneously, the ending of 22 years of a particular kind of carrying, the beginning of something I had not dared to name while I was still not sure it would come. We spent 4 days together. I showed her Savannah, the city I had made my life in, the streets I walked every morning, the garden I tended, the bookshop I visited every other Saturday. I made her the foods I would have made her growing up if I had been given the chance. And I told her stories about David as a boy, the funny ones, the ones that made him human and real rather than the complicated figure of her adult understanding. I showed her photographs. She looked at each one carefully. The way she looked at his face, with a searching quality as if she was trying to find something she recognized, made me have to look away several times. She told me about her life, about the people she loved, about the work she did and why it mattered to her, about Fig, who she had left with a friend and who had apparently expressed his disapproval of this arrangement by refusing to eat for an entire day. On the last evening, no, we sat on the back porch in the warm Savannah April air with glasses of sweet tea and the comfortable quiet of two people who have said most of what needed saying and are now simply in each other's presence, which is its own kind of conversation. She said, I'm glad I found you. I said, I'm glad you looked. We sat in the quiet for a while after that. Henry came and sat between us on the porch swing and stared at Lily with the specific evaluative expression of a cat deciding whether someone is acceptable. He eventually settled against her leg, which, from Henry, is essentially an endorsement. The karma in this story is not the kind I usually speak about. There is no villain whose ruin arrives as justice. There is no single moment of wrongdoing that is answered by the universe in kind. The story of what separated Lily and me is a story of many people making imperfect decisions in painful circumstances. And while some of those decisions had consequences they deserved, this story is not about that. This story's karma is simply this: I did not give up. I kept the birthday cards ready. I uploaded the photograph. I stayed in Savannah where I had always been, at the same address, with the same name, findable by anyone who decided to look. Not because I was certain Lily would look. I had largely stopped being certain of anything in those last few years, except that I would not disappear, that I would remain a fixed point in case the person I was waiting for ever turned in my direction. And she did. Karma in this story is the reward for 22 years of staying available, of not closing the door in bitterness, of remaining someone who could be found by someone who needed to find her. Lily visits twice a year now. We talk on the phone every Sunday. She calls me at 9, my time, because she knows I'm always up by then. We have developed the particular ease of people who chose each other and have been choosing each other ever since, not the ease of people who never lost the time. We cannot recover what those 22 years contained, and we do not pretend otherwise. But the ease of people who decided that what remains is worth building upon. She calls me Eleanor still, except sometimes, not always, and not made into a production of any kind, she calls me Grandma. The first time she did it, she was on the phone, and it came out in the middle of a sentence, naturally and without ceremony, and I do not think she even noticed. I noticed. No, I've held it every day since. I want to say something to the grandmothers, the ones who have a grandchild somewhere that they have not seen, that they have written letters to and sent birthday cards to and imagined growing up without being there to witness it. The ones who are sitting with that particular love, complete and ancient and completely unreturned, and wondering if it will ever have a place to land. Do not close the door. I know that sounds easier than it is. I know that 22 years of silence is not a small thing to carry, and that hope, when it has been disappointed enough times, begins to feel like a luxury you cannot afford. But stay findable. Upload the photograph, keep the address, keep the name, keep the birthday in your calendar, even if the card goes nowhere. Remain a person who can be discovered by someone who wakes up one day at 25 and decides that half a story is not enough. Because they do wake up. Not all of them, I know that. Some stories do not have the ending mine has, and I hold that truth with great humility because I know how easily my story could have ended differently. But some of them wake up, and when they do, when they type 3 words into a search bar on an ordinary afternoon, you want to be there to receive them. And I want to say something to the grandchildren, to the ones who are carrying half a story, who were told things or not told things and grew up in the gap between the versions they were given and the version they could not access. Who have a grandparent somewhere that they never knew or barely knew, and who have wondered in the quiet moments, the birthday moments, the moments when other people's families seem larger and more connected than their own. Whether it is too late, it is not too late. Go looking. The person you are looking for may be sitting at a kitchen table in Savannah, Georgia, with their coffee going cold, waiting for an email they had stopped allowing themselves to expect. They are still there. They have been there all along. This has been Soul Tales. My name is Eleanor. This Sunday at 9 o'clock in the morning, my phone will ring. It will be Lily. She will tell me about Fig and about her week and about something she read that she thought I would like. And I will listen with everything I have because 22 years of silence makes a person very good at listening.